Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Brothers Take podcast. I'm Chris. I am joined once again by my brothers, Adam
Hello.
and Eric.
Hello.
We are back in the room once again to talk about The Last of Us. We've been spotlighting this in the last few weeks as sort of one of our main topics every week, giving our spoiler-filled thoughts on each episode. And now everyone has hopefully seen the finale, because we will be giving our spoiler-filled thoughts on the finale and then also our kind of full review of the season as a whole now that we can look back on absolutely everything. So that is to say, don't listen to this episode unless you've actually watched all of The Last of Us. Whether you watch the show yourself or you watch the reactions or however you like to dissect shows nowadays. Because if you're someone that hasn't caught up with it, we're going to spoil it on you, basically. But I'm sure by now, everyone who has been watching it has seen it because it's been out over a week by now. And based on how everyone has been talking about this show, I think a lot of people have watched it. It's like doing really, really, really well. But we'd love to hear your take too. This isn't just about listening to us. We want to hear from you. So if you guys watch this YouTube, jump down into comments to share your thoughts on both the finale and the show as a whole. And ultimately, a question we're going to get around to: was Joel right? We're going to give our take on that. Everyone's divided on that, I think, or, there's so many discussions that come from that. And that goes all the way back to when the game first came out in 2013. So, was Joel right? We will be giving our take. We want to hear from you. And to those of you who are listeners on audio platforms, you can also touch base on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Brothers Take, again, to give your take on The Last of Us finale and The Last of Us show as a whole. But without further ado, let's jump in. Okay, so before we get on to the finale, I would like to ask each of you guys, what does The Last of Us game? I think anyone who's listened to the podcast knows that we're fans of the game because every episode we basically just do a comparison with the game and then say why the episode maybe didn't live up to what we would want because of the game. So I think it'd be good though to say, like, what does the game mean to you? And then we'll go into the finale.
I always found that the game was I think it's probably the greatest written narrative in any kind of form of entertainment. And I still think it holds up to that. Like, obviously we've spoken about like the influences and things like that, where they kind of came from, but everything kind of has some form of influence from somewhere, but it's just like kind of the way it's all brought together, the overall experience, game to game moment, as well as the cutscenes, as well as the acting, as well as the sound, as well as like just everything brought together in a masterful way. I don't have any complaints about the first game, which is probably why I never picked up the remake.
Yeah, right. Because it's a 1-for-1 remake, and
Yeah.
therefore it's like, well, I've played it and it's perfect.
Because as much as Metal Gear Solid is my favorite game of all time, I can easily say there's some shit in that that's like maybe cringy or
Sure.
definitely doesn't hold up.
You shut your fucking mouth.
And I
don't
think
have that blasphemy on this podcast.
I think you could probably say the same about Final Fantasy VII.
Who can? Of course we can.
Yeah.
We had a whole chunk where we just mentioned Kate Sith,
Yeah.
whatever the fuck it's pronounced.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course. There's so much shit in that that's fucking wacky.
yeah. But I just thought, I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think Last of Us really. I mean, you could probably say maybe the gameplay is not for you. Some people have issues with the gameplay. I don't personally. I think it's flawless.
Flawless victory. Okay. Eric, what does the game mean to you?
Well, I'm pretty sure I've said it before. It's game of the year for 200 years, man. Like, it's like what Adam said. It's very well. I think with the gameplay, it can be improved because I had played it recently enough. I think what I was planning on doing when the show first started was play sections to properly compare.
Oh, I get
So
you.
I played the whole Boston intro before the first episode, and then I played a whole bit, the bit outside the outskirts before chapter 2, and so on and so forth, and then other stuff got in the way, so I didn't manage to do that. But I know the game well enough anyway that I was able to make comparisons. But so the gameplay can be cleaned up and smooth because I did find a bit sort of like stiff. Movement was stiff, or sometimes it was quite like his little jog. I did not realize is so slow. I might as well be walking.
Yeah.
Um, but other than that, I like I think what Adam was saying quite early on that the Last of Us music is really good. And I think me and you, Chris, were thinking, ah, no, it's not that good until. But I think it's because with the Last of Us game, you're only hearing the Last of Us music. So you're
Hmm.
only really there's only those few two or three that are like, oh, that's really good, and then the rest is like fine. But it's only when you're hearing the Last of Us show where they're not always using that music. Is when
That
you're
when
like,
you do hear it, it
yeah, you're like,
impacts
oh,
you so
that is
greatly.
yeah. It's like, oh, that
Yeah.
actually that is really good. So the music then
Yeah, of course. That's a
is
good
really
point.
good.
Yeah.
And then yes, the acting and performances, because I think again saying it with certain things in the show where it's like they say the exact same line, but I'm like, the line is better in the game. So
Mm.
so I'd be on the same page with Adam that it's not the greatest, one of the greatest games absolutely made. And we can see even if people weren't making movies or TV shows of it straight away, we did see influences because if people like looked at the Logan trailer
Hmm.
and immediately had comparisons to The Last of Us.
Absolutely.
So even though that kind of
And God of War wouldn't exist.
God of War wouldn't have existed with The Last of Us. So even though you have the parent-child adventures, we've had them for years. They're in books and movies. I mean, The Road influenced Last of Us. But now we have The Last of Us influence all like movies and TV shows. So it's a very
Yeah,
influential modern game.
absolutely.
That's kind of
Well, even like
just
a Plague Tale Innocence, which is a game that me and you, Eric, love.
yeah.
Um, that's so heavily, like you could tell, like that's clearly influenced by The Last of Us.
Mm,
Even just the grim like tale of it.
yeah.
Not just the. It's not just an older person and a child. That's not
Yeah.
all it is.
Mm.
It's the whole thing is clearly influenced by
I
The
think that
Last of
maybe the
Us.
biggest impact that it's made, because the Last of Us wouldn't exist without the developments of motion capture and stuff that they did on Uncharted, and so on and
Mm,
so forth. But
Yes.
I think like Resident Evil 4, I think changed the landscape of the third person shooter.
mm,
After
Yes.
that, you kind of saw everything developing with that over shoulder view. Not that the Resi was the first, but it's the one that kind of showcased it really working. The impact that Last of Us had on games as a whole is making the secondary character, the person that you escort, an
Mm-hmm.
actual something that works and something you actually don't mind doing. Because
Mm.
after that, the escort style character became a great feature and not a burden.
Absolutely. Yeah,
mm.
yeah. Totally changed everyone's mindset towards because I mean, and you mentioned Resident Evil 4, a great example because as much as everyone loves Resident Evil 4 and it's one of the most beloved and influential games of all time, and maybe yet again with this remake coming out, um, fucking everyone hated Ashley.
Hmm.
Leon, help! Like the just ingrained is like what's scarier in the scariest thing in Resident Evil 4 is Ashley's voice, you know? Like that's just going through your head, like, shut up, every time she got kidnapped, you're like, thank God, get a break. Even though the objective was to find and rescue her. And I'm hoping that's one of the things that has been absolutely improved in the remake, and I think it will. But and if it has, I think The Last of Us is one of the games that in turn, like Last of Us was influenced by Resident Evil 4, and you can tell that playing it. And in turn, I think The Last of Us has influenced this remake.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be fucking cool and exciting to see. For me, Last of Us is one of the greatest games ever made. I've started it loads of times,
Hmm.
but I think I've only ever actually completed it twice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. Once on the original version and once the remaster. And yet, even at that, I remember fucking everything. Like it's so ingrained in my mind. It had such an impact on me, the overall experience, the performances. It's strange that I haven't finished it more. Um, but I have. I think The Last of Us is one of the reasons, and for people who know me will know what I mean. I think it's one of the reasons I do what I do for a living. I think the experience of Joel looking after Ellie
Hmm.
impacted me in a huge way and wanting to help Ellie.
That's why
So
you go around throwing bricks at people.
absolutely. So that and yes, I'm a bricklayer. And that's thanks to The Last of Us.
Foundation starts somewhere.
Yeah. Literally. Its house won't build itself, guys. Um, but yeah, look, I think it's just an incredible game, an incredible story. It's one of the best performances we've ever seen in gaming, and that's why when we're talking about the show, like it's so hard for us to just look at the show on its own merits and not think about how fucking incredible the game was, because we clearly all love it. Our bye-bye at the end of every episode is based on Ellie's bye-bye dude from the game. So that's kind of ingrained in the podcast too. So yeah, that's where we're coming from. We're really, really big fans of the game. So now,
End of discussion. Bye bye, guys.
That's it. That's all I have to say. No, let's transition to our thoughts on the finale before we can then jump into the whole was Joel right discussion and then a review of the season as a whole. Now that we have kind of framed where we come from in terms of how much we love that game.
Okay.
The season finale, final spoiler warning, everyone. Eric, what did you think of the finale?
Rushed.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty solid.
Yeah, we've said that all along, right?
Yeah, 44 minutes.
It's the shortest episode.
Which is ridiculous. Performance is really good. I liked the conversation when they're in the Fedric camp.
Yeah.
And Joel talks about the guy at the shooting with the scar, like that he tried to kill himself. Really liked that. And then I liked the fact that he
liked how it was written and performed. Yeah.
And then asking her for the puns and stuff like that, and that kind of buddy moment. I thought Ashley Johnson was really good.
Yes, she was. Yo, you're right.
Thanks, man.
I don't know why you said it like that.
Oh boy, sent shivers up my spine.
Yes,
I'm right about something.
Correct, Eric. Correct.
Our survey says
it's on the board. Yeah. What were the good things of the finale? Ashley Johnson was at the top of the board. Well done. Okay.
And I like that the ending was pretty much like exactly the same. The pacing of it, and then going into that music and ending with that. It's just the fact that it's so fucking rushed.
That would be my biggest complaint. I think this episode needed, right? Absolutely needed the tunnel sequence. And I think if it had a good 10-minute tunnel sequence added into it that ends with Ellie nearly drowning and needing to be resuscitated and then them being taken in by the fireflies, I think this episode would have been just pretty solid. Bar one other complaint that I had, and Ash watching it with me had the same, was like we both really liked first of all, love the role that Ashley Johnson was playing. In a very spiritual passing on the torch type thing. I knew that's who she was playing, and I was always excited. I had no idea when they were going to show it in the show, but I was like, that is just like, that's perfect. That is such a perfect way of doing that. And when you look at, I never realized Ashley Johnson and Bella look quite similar. Their faces are really, really similar, but don't like the birth sequence. Have to say, like, I like that she was getting attacked, but like then she just looked down and the baby was just there. Like Ash literally rolled her eyes and went, "Come on!" Like,
I was like,
that was like simplest birth sequence I've ever seen.
Well, I was thinking that myself. I think I said that to my supervisor because she was watching the show as well.
Yeah,
no one pretty much nothing about the game, but she made that comparison as well. That Ashley Johnson and Bella Ramsey looked very similar and sounded quite similar. But like I did make that comment where it's like it's the most terrifying birth, the scariest birth, but also the easiest birth at the same time, because naturally you don't want a zombie trying to eat you while you're pregnant, but then all of a sudden, look, the baby's there. All those hours of agonizing pain.
Yeah, I know, but isn't it like I don't know if you've ever been in a scuffle before, but it's like everything, when adrenaline kicks in, you just don't feel anything, really. You're just so focused on the thing, and there's a lot of energy exerted when you're trying to get something off you.
Mm.
That I think it would just I didn't question that at all. I think that could actually happen because there's so much force spin happening and you're just so focused on survival. When you're so focused on survival, everything else just blanks out. You could be bleeding to death and you don't feel it.
Yeah. I think I would have had her like bitten earlier though. I think like her getting bit, then giving birth, then cutting the cord. It's so fast and so quick. I'm not convinced that it made its way through that quickly. But then again, maybe with the adrenaline pumping through her body, maybe it did. But I just feel like if she had been bitten a little bit earlier and then was still giving birth, and it was a slightly longer process.
Yeah.
Cool fucking Daywalker backstory though. Like,
yeah, I
dick, bro.
wasn't sure whether I was gonna like that sequence, but I really liked it, and I think the reason I liked it was that's what I think the show was missing. That was a very intense, scary moment. Like you can imagine being in that moment like that, and it's banging on the door, and I kind of wish there was more of that in the show. I think.
Well, I've got two other points on that scene actually. One, I wrote that scene. Go back and listen to one of our older episodes, and it's a different format to this. But when we were reviewing and then rewriting The Last of Us Part 2, I said this is how I would have started the game. The Last of Us Part 2 is with the birth of Ellie, and her mother would have been trying to give birth while clickers are on the way, and Marlene would have been with her. So I'm like, hey, cool idea, guys. I like that.
Thanks for watching our episode.
No, I mean, obviously, look, anyone could have.
It's not from the comic, though.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Fuck!
Is that not?
Now it's going to look like I got it from the comic, and it's not an original idea.
I can't really remember. I think there was a comic that was
guys.
made called American Daughters. That was like Dark
I thought
Horse.
Neil Druckmann said he wrote a short story of it and then was going to turn it into an anime, and then it never happened. And I'm not sure if he ever published the short story he wrote.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there was a Dark Horse
no
comics called American Daughters, and I think it had something to do with Ellie's mom.
Call BS on me, guys. The other thing though is I was thinking about like, have you guys seen A Quiet Place?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The pregnancy scene in that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's fucking intense.
It is.
I like the idea of like the, sound in both that and in The Last of Us can get you killed.
Yeah.
And the pregnancy being like obviously it's a blessing because you have this child you're going to bring into the world, and it's going to be the thing you love more than anything in the world. But it's also a ticking time bomb as to when you're going to go into labor.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. Like I nearly would have watched maybe a full episode of leading up to the birth of Ellie over Left Behind, maybe. Because I think they could have really played with that tension incredibly well.
I think there's a lot of stuff even like throughout the show that warrants the whole season of exploration of all these other characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did you think of the episode as a whole, Adam?
I quite liked the episode, just because I liked how certain elements were done and shot.
Yeah.
But there was moments where I was like, just before the bit that Eric was talking about with where they're at the camp, like before all that, when they're talking about, like they're walking to us and they're talking about the skyscraper thing and all that talk. There's something really off about Bella and Pedro's performance, and I'm wondering if they were maybe the first scenes shot in this season.
How so do you mean?
The way the dialogue is, it's like as if they haven't fully found their characters just yet. Like it almost feels.
Is that a result of the distance being put between them? Do you think?
I don't think so, because even Pagan said the same thing. It's like there's something really weird here. It's not natural. Like the way they're doing it is not natural. Even the way it was framed and the way the camera changes to each of them, it's like as if they haven't fully found it yet or something. It was really jarring in comparison to the rest of the episode we found.
You're right.
And there is a kind of an element of like, what's her deal? A little bit. Like, I know what she's gone through, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that distancing. It kind of removes the potency of the distancing towards the end, right? So towards the end, obviously she's distancing from him, and you're kind of wondering, why is she distancing? Like, what's happening here? And that's obviously the thoughts running through her head, and then she asks that question. But if she's distancing for the whole episode, it just kind of just feels like,
I get you, but she is distancing, or at least she's not herself at that portion of the game anyway, isn't she?
a little bit, yeah. But there's just something.
Like,
There's something. Because even the moment, which was a cool moment, was the ladder to the giraffe scene, right?
yeah.
It almost like as if it snaps. Then it's like, oh yeah, I'll just snap out of it, and then we go right. I think it just needed to be less. Like, obviously, there's something like she's not herself
After
but
the David experience,
but it
right?
almost like as if, yeah, the whole her kind of off thinking, and she's like, like it just seemed a bit like she'd rather be somewhere else. Is like that almost how it portrayed. Rather than like as if it looked like as if she, because it's coming to the end, that she's not sure she wants to go to this next place, and there's such a gap between, like in the game, I think it works because you can go straight into that moment and you've just felt it and you can feel it with her.
Absolutely.
But there's a whole week. We don't know how long that's been. So I don't know if it translates that well necessarily. So I just felt that section of it was really odd, the way that was performed and shot.
Yeah.
And the bit with the puns then as well. I was the moment they asked for puns and they start doing it, and the way it was shot as well, the way it was framed and the dialogue that they had, I was like, nah, something's going to happen here. You know, I felt it was very telling.
Yeah. What did you think of the giraffe sequence?
That a real giraffe, or is that CGI?
It's real, yeah.
The giraffe is real. The environment is not.
Yeah.
So that's why it kind of looks a bit weird.
Yeah, that's why it looks strange. So they went to, from what I know, they went to a zoo, and they were allowed to like build this like blue room basically, and then allow the giraffe to come into it. They obviously couldn't take a giraffe out of the zoo. Like, you just can't do that. I'm sure there's like hundreds of reasons why you can't do it. But so yeah, that's why there was an odd thing going on there. It did look odd, but the giraffe itself is actually real.
Okay.
It's interesting that they prioritized the giraffe over like the environment. You know, a lot of people would just go, let's get a cool area and let's CGI a giraffe.
Yeah,
It's
but I think
they went, no, we want a real giraffe to interact with. We don't care about the background as much.
Well, I think it's if you have it, you're getting everything correct. You're getting a giraffe's correct behavior towards somebody, and then you're just going to get genuine reaction out of people from an animal,
it could be
than
really distracting if it was a CGI giraffe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like because I think when you have, I think it was Man and Bennett talking about Azog. Now, obviously, you can't get a warg because they're not real, but he's like sitting on this big giant green couch or something like that, drum thing, and he's kind of just trying to interact and act with it in this green room. But if you have the real thing, it always just works better. People will react naturally. But my God, I did not realize how long giraffes' tongues were.
Yeah,
Like a freaking anteater. This is
I feel like that's one of those things actually that if you, even with the best artists in the world, if you CGI'd it, that's one of those things you get wrong.
Yeah,
I feel it's one of those things that because people always just, even if they've like studied it or looked it up, I think people just, there's certain things about certain animals that people think that can't be true, so let's make it smaller. It doesn't look real. But it's like you see the real thing and you go, Jesus. But Bella's laugh there, I felt authentic.
Yeah,
I think they kind of lost their character for a moment and were just actually enjoying playing Jurassic Park with the fucking giraffe, basically. That was cool.
Yeah.
And I like their rooftop scene then. You know, they're looking out at them and he's like, we don't have to do this.
Yeah.
I thought that was good. I think it would have been better if it was followed by the tunnel sequence. Because it's like, there's no going back. We have to finish this. Felt like it's like they have to go through one last like That'd be like an Endgame was like, let's go get this son of a bitch, and then there is no fight with Thanos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it just felt like that was nearly like their let's do this. Like this is our kind of battle talk. Let's finish this. Let's finish what we started. And then yeah, I really think that tunnel sequence is more important than maybe people. It's not just a gameplay sequence. Like it's actually an important story sequence. I think.
Well, infected throughout, and I think we've been saying it. It's not
Yeah.
it's not just because we want to see lots of action. That's not it.
Yeah.
You don't even
No,
have
of course
to.
not.
You can sneak past them. It doesn't matter. It's like you need to show how brutal this world is. It's a horrible world. You need to really justify that infection and the cure for it. Like really
Yeah.
justify it.
Yes. Yeah. Because that makes like having just gone through that makes it's like that's what we're gonna stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that makes the final kind of decision that much more difficult, right?
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
And there's more. I think the other thing they're kind of missing a little bit. They obviously explored a bit with Sam and Henry.
Yeah.
Which is the fact that these are or were humans. You know, they there's more of an exploration around like, well, the way people lived, and now look at them and the way they're being used and all this kind of stuff. Like you kind of the show is lacking a lot of that exploration, I think.
Yeah. There's a great letter in The Last of Us Part 2 at one point where Joel and Ellie come across two people who had deserted Jackson to kind of go out and look for other ways of life. And they find one corpse, and then an infected comes out, and Joel kills the infected that Ellie didn't even notice. But the letter is like, and that in itself just tells a story that's like, that's the kind of like storytelling in like The Last of Us games, which is like, oh, fuck, we didn't see the clicker, we both got bit, we're gonna end our lives.
Yeah.
And then in that he basically puts, I'm a fucking coward. I killed her, but I can't do myself.
Yeah. And that's
You
him
know?
then. Yeah, there's a lot of
Or
like
whatever.
you can put the pieces together. The storytelling in The Last of Us game is a bit of a puzzle itself. Just as much as like the puzzles where you have to crack the safe, they're not difficult. It's pretty obvious. It's in the environment. And that's kind of like a tutorial of how to piece the storytelling in the environment together as well. You can kind of just look at that and you see that and you kind of go, well, this guy maybe used to work here and this happened and now he's locked in there, and you know, the environment tells a story, and it's not just told to you.
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
probably one of my criticisms of the show, because with the last episode, I wasn't too keen on the whole Joel turning to Ellie and basically just straight up saying, "Look, you changed my life, girl." You know, like, you are now my daughter. Okay, okay. The game I think is way more subtle in its storytelling, and you know it, you feel it, and whereas here they have to tell you. They have to tell you.
I hear what you're saying. I quite like how they delivered though, because like, you know, Joel and Ellie would never say "I love you" to each other, just not in their character. It's not something they'd say, but they say it in this episode, and the way they say it is he goes, "It wasn't time that did it," and just looks at her, and she goes, "I'm glad that didn't work out," and looks at him, and that's their way of saying "I love you."
No, I know, I know that.
So.
It just coming off the back of the last episode just seems a bit. You could read that into being creepy if you wanted to.
Oh,
yeah. The way.
I hope people have not.
Well, it did come off a bit freaky, a little bit,
okay.
and just overall, the way Joel acted in that episode. Seemed a little crazy.
Sure.
Have you met him? That guy's fucking nuts.
He is a little bit crazy.
Yeah, but in like an overly like, you stay with my safe things kind of way.
Yeah, like 10 Cloverfield Lane kind of way.
Yeah, a bit obsessive, you know. Which I think plays into the end a little bit.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, I really enjoyed this finale episode. I wish it was longer, and I think there's ways that it could have been longer. Because it feels some elements of it felt slightly because it's the shortest episode, and you have to wait a week for it. So again, this wouldn't be an issue if you were streaming, and like you could watch them all and binge it or whatever, because you would just flow into each other. Because you're waiting a week for it for the big finale, and then it's over so quickly. There's an element of anticlimaticness to it, I think.
Yeah.
But I am really happy, and we'll get to talk about like the end sequence now. Like I'm really happy that whether you watch the show or whether you played the game, there's a huge audience now can have a discussion about the ending, and it's not a different discussion. So, if it's like, hey man, you ever check out Resident Evil? Yeah. What do you think of the ending? Yeah, man. I love the bit when Alice. I'm like, no. In the game, you see, in the game, Alice isn't in it. So, like, what do you think of like Jill Valentine? She sucked because she was the second one. She didn't do very much. No. In the game though, I like that there's an audience can have the same conversation about the same characters, whether they played the game or the show. Now, obviously, there's lots of differences between the two as well, but they have very much kept the ending virtually intact in terms of the main beats of what happens.
Yeah.
That people can discuss that ending and it not be a case of, oh, but you didn't play the game, so like you don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? I think.
Yeah. So what's your question?
What do you guys think of the hospital sequence,
Well, the overall
etc.?
So the really well done to the point of like I needed more of that throughout, right? It didn't need to be done like this, but like it's almost like this kind of build up to this fantastic moment. I love the montage. I love the kind of the slow-mo, the use of the music throughout that moment. Really fucking well done. It really puts you in his head a little bit. But I think there needed to have been, because it's like it's a little bit not as bad, obviously, because it's really well done. But you remember in Resident Evil Netflix show?
Yeah, I don't like where you're going with this though. But go on.
But you know when the dude, the Northern Irish dude, just all of a sudden becomes John Wick?
Oh, sure.
And it's just kind of like, where the fuck did that come out of? Like
Yeah.
we understand that he's a survivor and he can do shit, but it would have been nice to have maybe another sequence somewhere else earlier on in the game. Billstown would have been an opportunity to show that, where they actually are, fighting, or maybe when Ellie runs off and it's him and Tommy are like going after and saving her from raiders. I think there needed to be another moment that kind of
shows how capable Joel really is.
Yeah, and that this is just like the ultimate, the pinnacle of it. But it was a great scene,
absolutely.
really great scene.
Yeah, one of the best I think in the show.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the best shot moment. Yeah.
What do you think, Eric?
I would have. I think we said it in the previous episode. It is really good. The music is good, but could be better in my opinion.
Okay.
A part of me really wishes, instead of just cutting the Joel shoots someone, cut Joel shot someone, cut Joel shot someone, if it was like episode 4 of Stranger Things, where it was done in that.
I know.
Following Joel.
Yeah.
I think that would have just really peaked it. It would have been awesome. And by doing that, by following Joel and only cutting where absolutely necessary, you can expand out the episode more. I think as well, like what you're saying, Adam, if they had other moments where it's like if he's in Billstown and Bill gives him the Molotov, and then later on maybe Henry shows him about the nail bomb or something like that. And so at this point, you see him like the Molotov. Yeah, he uses everything. And
he's use the tools he's collected over the show.
Absolutely decimating everyone. I think would have been really cool. But then from the kind of, still very good awesome sequence. Just that little thing where it's like, it's
I
like
know, yeah, yeah.
we've seen it done in so many things, and it does kind of improve action sequences when you are sort of just
Would you think you would
following
like to, if
the
what
action.
you're saying, that kind of like the following the camera thing, action moments, if that was done in another episode earlier on?
No.
No?
So I would have liked to have seen other action sequences earlier on. Um, but I think this was just the moment to do something really special. Now, that is not to say I actually really enjoyed the sequence. I thought it was really good. I really liked the music myself personally. I thought it
Yeah.
had a real sadness to it, but also like a really kind of epic rendition of the main theme as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's an element of like I wanted the scene to crescendo to the point when he gets to the surgery room, and that's where you cut and stop and go back to.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I want and like more shots at Joel as well, more like barriers in his way nearly. But again, I really enjoyed what they did. I just can't help but think, like yeah, it's that thing of like playing the game and like
Yeah.
feeling.
I
game.
I agree
It's
that
like the people are stopping you getting to Ellie, and you
Yeah.
are going, stop stopping me. I need to save her life.
Yeah.
You know?
I would have loved the thing that Eric's talking about, that kind of thing. But I think I would have loved that earlier at another point where it is a moment of, because you're seeing every moment and it's like a moment of survival, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that the last one where it's kind of just slowly cutting between the moments and it's showing the bullets. It's for me it was very poetic, and it's almost a fall from grace kind of moment, and you're only focusing on the kills and not focusing on the him surviving through it all. But I think it needed something, and ultimately, just to sum up the episode, right before we get to the actual ending, I don't think this episode is earned in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah,
I understand that. Yeah.
So it's a really good episode. I agree with you. I think that, and it goes back to what we've been saying all along, really, which is there's not enough episodes, and as a result, they're rushing these things. And yes, I actually feel like coming just straight off the David episode and kind of straight into this, it doesn't feel earned. As just a show.
Yeah.
Like I don't. Now, in saying that, the amount of people I've spoken to who have just watched the show, have never played the game, like they fucking love this.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely love this show so much, and they've made that clear. And I haven't played the game. And like even someone were like asking me questions, like it's like how do you play the Bill and Frank bit in the game though? Like how does that work? You know what I mean? And I was like, oh,
Did you ever play God of War?
It's like, but I'm like,
It was a smash circle.
But I'm like, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is a totally different take. So yeah, I suppose we just have, when you have played the game, you just spent so much longer with these characters uninterrupted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the ending is so earned. But if you just have this as a show, and this is just like a unique show that is different to maybe other shows you've seen, maybe this completely works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're separated from anything else, because you don't have that thing of, oh, but it would have been better like this, or it would have been better like that. You just have it, and you've nothing else.
I suppose that's why it is somewhat different with the show than the game, because in the show I find, well, yes, you're cutting and you're showing just the kills. And I get that that's why they're doing it. But I felt a little bit like when I'm playing the game, I'm in a hurry to get to Ellie. So I'm bypassing people. I'm killing only if I have to, get through that door, barricade it again, and keep going.
I think, yeah.
But in this, it's a very different motivation for Joel.
I think that point that you just made is going to be that's the issue with that question that Chris was bringing up, which is, is Joel right? And it all comes down to, how did you play that end? Because the way you played it, your motivation to drive Joel is very different than what they presented in the show.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah.
Did you know Laura Bailey is actually one of the nurses in that?
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. That's cool.
Well,
what
I love that they had everyone, but
I know. What I didn't know though is I didn't know that Laura Bailey does play the nurse in the game.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's where they first like, and she does a few different roles in the game, in the first game, and then they were like, "Oh, you're great. Like, we want to work with you again." And then gave her obviously a massive role in the next game. But
Absolutely,
and she is
massive.
great.
She's good.
But no, Laura Bailey's great.
She should do that as a job.
She really should. Yeah, I'd root for her.
Yeah.
So what did you guys ultimately think of the ending then?
Just outside Jackson?
Yeah. And like the way they cut between like the car conversation back to like the scene of Marlene and stuff like that.
I think I did say at the start of my review of this last episode is that I liked they pretty much kept all that the same.
Yeah.
It's nearly beat for beat the same thing. Even when going up hiking up the mountain, beat for beat the same, ending with the same tune, same piece of music. He's
less convincing in the show though, I think, than in the game.
Yeah, I wouldn't believe him either.
No, yeah.
yeah.
Even in the car, you know, he's like got all these little subtleties in his eyes and stuff. Where you're just like, you're definitely not telling the truth, bro. Yeah. Whereas in the game, I actually think because the way it was cut, you're kind of like, oh, that's a bit weird the way they just cut like that. I was a bit thrown in the game, I think, and then it cuts back to what actually happened, and you go, oh fuck.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because if we didn't see what happened, then it would make sense for Pedro to play it that way, because we as an audience would be in Ellie's position where we're like,
we don't know. Yeah.
He's telling me this information, but it seems like there's something not right about it. But we did see it, so if he had played the scene like so convinced, like this is exactly what happened, we saw otherwise, so we already know he's lying. But I do suppose there has to be a way, because even in the game, Ellie's not convinced.
No, yeah.
You know, so I suppose as an actor, he was trying to give something for Bella to bounce off, to really feel like, you know, like when you're acting in person, like, and you're trying to help the actor out in that way. Like, I get it. I think he's doing it for Bella's sake, to give them the response that they need to have.
Just read the sheet, like it says on the sheet.
That's like
that's all it is. You just read the lines.
It's the extras thing, is it? Where Ian McKellen is like, how did I know what to say? It was written in the script.
I know where to stand.
I'm not actually
the director told
a wizard.
me to stand there.
I just act like a wizard.
Yes.
That's it.
That's the secret to acting. I love that.
Yeah, it's good.
So yeah, we're all pretty happy, I think, with the ending then.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I think.
Well, they did the game, which is what we said from episode 1. Just do the game.
Interesting enough, I think the end of the game for a small group of people anyway was a bit underwhelming anyway. You know, the way it just cuts like that, and it doesn't quite. Maybe they it just doesn't quite like understand the gravity of the answering that question to Ellie. So I imagine there's probably a lot of people who've never played the game sees this and kind of goes, "Really? That's it?" I totally get why they might feel that way, but purely because I just don't know if they've really built up to that moment. Great, but
I get you. Yeah,
it's good.
Yep. So was Joel right?
The interesting thing about that question is that has never been in my peripheral ever.
Until now?
No, until part 2 came out.
That's so interesting, because actually when I played the original game back in 2013, finished it for the first time, and a few of my friends were playing it too. And one of my friends said, "What do you think of the ending?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll be honest. At first, I was like, is that it? That was my impression." And then the more I thought about it, I was like, "Oh, that is great." And part of me hopes they never do a sequel, because it's such a How would you? Where do you go from there? Really, like that's just such a great ending. And he was like, "Right, like you were the bad guy all along." And I was like, "What?
What?"
He was like, "Yeah, I mean, you're essentially the villain." And I was like, "That's an interesting take." That's not my take. That's not how I saw it. I saw it's very complicated, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But, so as it turns out, and this has actually been debated on the internet for a long time, and the debate has come back up now because of the show, that has been people's perspective, even before The Last of Us Part 2. Some people feel that Joel did the wrong thing and ultimately was the villain in the end. And other people feel, hell no,
But
he's the hero of the story. And I want to hear what you guys think.
so yeah,
It's complicated.
My supervisor actually, she asked me that same question, and I said, not that Joel was a bad guy, but yeah, Joel did the wrong thing,
Oh,
right?
give it to us, Eric.
And then she
Justin.
then she explained to me that there was actually a survey done with like a lot of people, and essentially 50% of the people said, no, he did it exactly what anyone would have done. But that 50% or whatever percentage it was were all parents.
Yeah.
And then everyone who said he did the wrong thing were people who weren't parents. And I'm like, oh, no.
It is very different if you have a child, I think.
Yeah. And I was like, no, don't get me wrong. He did exactly what I would do if I was in that situation. That's not the right thing. From a grander moral perspective, say letting one life go so that you can save the many would have stopped Thanos from snapping his fingers and wiping out half of all the universe.
I don't think it's quite like that, though, you see.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite
because,
like that either. I think it's way more complicated.
And I think I was always questioning why the fuck that prologue was put into the first episode. I couldn't understand, why would you even bother? What's the reasoning for doing that?
Yeah,
up until this moment.
Oh, hit us with it, Adam. I wasn't thinking about this at all. Go ahead.
He says in it, if that happens, right? If the cordyceps things happens to humanity, there's no going back from it. There is no cure. You cannot stop it. He, from a science perspective, is saying there is no cure.
Okay.
So, what the Fireflies are going to do here is a gamble that weighs heavier on this is a completely waste of time and a waste of life. There is no cure.
I
had a similar perspective. I wasn't thinking back to that intro at all, actually, but just based on what Marlene says, right? Which is, we have a doctor. He thinks this is why she's immune. So he thinks that by cutting it out, we might be able to make a cure. So a lot of people made the argument that they are sacrificing one life to save lots of lives.
Yeah, there's the assumption that there will absolutely be a cure.
The assumption that it's going to work.
Yeah.
And this is why it's complicated. In principle, what Joel is doing could be very wrong.
Yeah.
Right? In like moral principle. So is what they're doing.
Yep.
Neither of them are right.
Yep.
Why wouldn't they wake Ellie up
and consent?
Explain the medical procedure to the fucking patient and allow Ellie to consent to the operation, which is literal biomedical ethics. It is unethical to do any operation on a person without their consent, which is actually why as well, for example, if somebody has, and this is taught to first aiders all the time, I've done first aid courses. If somebody has something on them that says do not resuscitate, you are legally not allowed to resuscitate them if they are dying. And if you do, they can sue you.
This is why I think the game, and I was thinking more from the perspective of the game rather than the show.
Sure.
The game does it better. Because I think in the game, they don't say think and might. I think they say will.
I always thought as well, though, there was
definite.
no... Yeah, but I still thought even in the game, there's no evidence.
Yeah.
There's not really evidence, but they don't explain how the fungus possibly is making her immune. It just seems like she has evolved to somehow be immune. But they also explain into it, they don't have time to wake her up. Because of the drowning, because of all that sequence, they can only remove it now.
Yeah, that was another thing that was a little bit slipped up, I think, in the show, wasn't it? Because she wakes up? and she's asking for him. I don't know, maybe they're just joking or kind of not joking, but just making him feel better. But you know, Marlene was saying to Joel that she was asking about you. Didn't she?
Yeah, she said she was more worried about you
Yeah, and I think it's like
when
okay,
they took her in.
so she was awake and then you put her to sleep again?
Yeah, like, and what's the hurry? Like, why right now? Like,
Yeah. What is the hurry?
why not just explain to Ellie what you're going to do?
Why now? Why not 10 years ago?
Have a bit of respect for this fucking 14-year-old. Like,
Yeah, but that's why I think they do again that better in the game, because in the game it's like we can't wake her up. We only have right now. We have to do it now. And Joel's like, no, like let me see her. It's like, no, we can't let you see her. You might as well just go. You know what I mean? And then Marlene even justifying that's like, I actually looked after her longer than you, so I care more. And Marlene's trying to justify she's making ultimate sacrifice and all that. But yeah, that is a fair point from the show's perspective. That because it's only a mite, that there's a possibility that if they took this fungus, took the stuff from her, killing Ellie, give it to everyone else, they might not bond with it the same way Ellie does, which means you've just made more.
You just made more of it. Yeah, there's interesting that there's a couple of people. I think that it is interesting that now that this is a show, it does reach more people.
yes.
There's
and that same debate will exist.
Yeah, there was a good few medical professionals on Twitter really questioning, is that even an actual doctor? Because that's not how this works.
Right.
They were saying that actually would not work, like at all.
Right. Well, okay, so it's fantasy as well, though, right? Like it's like, of course, there's going to be elements.
I mean,
like, of course,
it's funny watching people though get all really worked up over that though, going like, Sonny fucking, fungal infection wouldn't work either. You know, it's like, okay, but I think perhaps it's an interesting discussion because, you know, either way, if you're getting angry about it, it means you want Joel to be the bad guy for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think the way they've done, and they, like I was saying,
could the reverse be true as well, though? If people get so defensively passionate about, no, Joel did the right thing, that they
I'm
just
not saying he did the right
want
thing.
Joel to be the good guy.
I think it's complicated.
I think that is the answer. I got put out a little poll. I mean, not a lot of people engaged in it, but funnily enough, all the responses were so. Like I said, did Joel do the right thing? Yes, no, or it's not that simple, right? To just say yes or no, and a small percentage of people said yes. Nobody said no on this particular one, but most people said it is not that simple. Actually, a good friend of ours, messaged and said when they played the game way back, they were like, no, what Joel did is not right. And since they've become a father, they're like, I would do what Joel did 100 times over.
Yeah, I think
so, and that's so interesting.
It is interesting. Like I think that all comes down to how did you play it? Because when I played the game, I didn't really see myself as the villain. What Joel was doing, purely because like as you went through, you know the kind of world this is. You know the kind of shit that Joel did.
Yeah.
Even outside of the game, just for survival. Every single one of those Firefly could have been just as bad as David. We don't know that. You don't know their backstory. They're just here. You don't know the kind of shit that they've done. They are trying to kill you. They're not exactly asking you nicely to leave. You're at gunpoint.
And they're going to kill the kid.
They're going to kill the kid. When I walked into that doctor's room, I did not pull the trigger.
Right.
On any of them.
Yeah.
That doctor goes for you with that surgical knife. And Joel defends himself and kills the doctor in the process. Or you can gun them down. And this is the equivalent of like if you were going to do an Infamous movie or a Mass Effect movie, are they Renegade or are they Paragon?
Sure,
which one do you choose? Which one officially is the correct way to do it? Because when there's a choice, you don't know what way gamers play. I would say the most people probably shot down the doctor, but I didn't.
But they did a slight mix here in the show. The doctor does pick up the scalpel and says, "You are not coming near her."
Yeah. And
then he shoots him.
Yeah, in a very
nonchalant sort of way, kind of like he doesn't. He's almost blank. He's like he has like like a day, like a glaze in his eyes or something. Like he's not really paying attention to
Yeah.
what's going
Sort
on.
of
He just
disassociated.
yeah, he just fires. I think I shot him the first time. I've never killed the nurses.
No, I've never killed nurses.
No, no.
I think I've shot him the
So
first time because
actually,
I didn't
the sh
realize
the
you
show did
can.
your playthrough right.
Yeah, it. I didn't realize the first time you can go up to him, grab the scalpel, and stab him in the throat.
Oh,
I
I've
didn't realize
never
that
done
the first
that.
time. I've done that a few times. It's because there, and I kind of would have. I don't know, maybe preferred that. I don't mind the shooting. I think, but to me, the shooting just is like, bang, move, pick up. We have to rush
Yeah.
episode. End it
I
now.
no, but I kind of like the way he disposes him. It
Mm.
is really a look. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm not here to argue with anyone. I'm telling you to unhook her.
Mm.
Boom. If you're not going to do it, just unhook her. I'm getting out of here. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if it was done with a little bit more panic, though, like a little bit more, like,
Yeah.
hectancy, like unhook her. Like I am leaving. We
Or
are
if
leaving.
he did actually go for him with the knife, like actually go for him and then shot him before that happened.
Sure.
Uh,
I suppose the way it's presented here though allows for, and look, obviously they are setting up part two, right?
well, that's my
But
issue with it.
I know, but they have to. That's going to happen, and that's just there's nothing that can be done about that. But they have to set up in such a way that, from Joel's perspective, the guy picked up a knife,
Yeah.
and the guy is saying you can't take her, so the guy is going to attack me. From Abby's perspective, my father did nothing, and he got shot. Like they have to present it in such a way that you can look at it with two perspectives.
Yeah, but I think I don't think anyone's going to look at it as that guy picked up the knife and Joel was defending himself. I don't think anyone's going to look at it that way. He killed him in cold blood, regardless of if he picked up that scalpel. I think that's the way they presented it in the show. And kind of the way they, even his dialogue, that's why I didn't like his dialogue with Ellie in that episode. It was very, like, obsessive and fucking crazy. They really wrote him to be he's kind of more villainous in this episode. So,
Sure.
Is Joel the bad guy? Or did he do the wrong thing? In the game, I don't think it's that simple. In the show, I think they wrote him to be that way.
I don't agree. I actually don't agree. I think in both versions, it's not that simple.
Yeah, I think you can
Now-
argue, but I think it's leaning heavy. It's leaning more into we really need him to be not a good guy because it really serves the purpose for the second one.
Yeah, because if you look again, going back to the shooting, I think I said this. I might have said this. I can't remember. It seems to like that he goes completely out of his way to kill everyone.
Yeah,
Because he's
How do
like
you mean?
standing there. Because there's like one point where he shoots a guy in the head, and he's kind of stands and he looks, and he's sort of walking.
Mhm.
No,
yeah.
most people in the
Yeah, I
game
would have liked
probably
him to have,
crouch,
ran more.
move
yeah,
around. Yeah. And you're usually moving past everyone, or yeah, maybe you are killing everyone, but that's probably because you've played it about 3 times and you're like at this point, like, I'm just going to kill everybody and move along. But most people probably move their way past. But in this, it's like he's moving quite slow, so he's not even in a rush to get to Ellie, and he's like going out of his way to kill everyone. And then he's just very like, yeah, unhook her, please unhook her, bang, grab. Right, so I can see where Adam is looking at it, where it is writing that idea that he is kind of being more villainous. But then I can also look at the perspective that if you're a parent, though, you're going to do everything to try to protect her.
Yeah.
So if no
Yeah,
one's
and
unhooking her, it's like, right, well, I'm going to force you to unhook her. So I'm going to shoot this guy with the scalpel, unhook her. Thank you. I'm going to move. If you had it just done in the first place, I would have shot nobody.
There's also that belief of, because I get what you're saying, going out of your way to kill everyone instead of just rushing past people. And yes, I do think that if he had just rushed past people, it would have created more of a hectic energy to just get to Ellie, get to the finish line, and get out of there as quickly as possible. However, I can see the argument as well to be made that in Joel's mind, even if I get her out of here, they will come after us. So everyone must die. Everyone here is a threat. He says to Marlene, you would just come after her if I let you live. So I do think, like, because there's that thing of like someone could look at the scene where, for example, one guy surrenders.
Yeah.
And he shoots them anyway, right? And it's like, oh, they're clearly making Joel out to be a bad guy. That's a bad guy thing to do. He knows full well that if he doesn't shoot him and turns his back, the guy's gonna pick up the gun and shoot him in the back.
Yeah, I agree. But actually, it all depends on how you present it.
Sure.
Right? It's like we can have the same. I don't know if you've ever seen those clips. Like sometimes they might. It might be a scuffle that someone's happening, and they just clip a very small section of the video to say, look at this person, they're obviously an asshole, right? But you didn't get the full clip, you didn't get the full context of it. So the way it's presented changes how we will view them. And so if you did that exact same thing, but it is more hectic, I think actually everyone would be a bit more like, okay, no, he's obviously just trying to protect. But the way they did it, it really reminds me of, remember in Blade, when he's going in after Whistler got killed?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he's going in, and some of them are not even vampires; they're humans, and they're saying, "Look, I just work for them," and he's just like mercilessly just killing them all.
Yeah,
it's very like that scene.
It is like that scene, actually.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a cool comparison. In terms of the moral dilemma, right? So a lot of people think of like the big picture. That is one life worth saving over like all the lives of the world if this thing was to work, right?
All right.
The other thing though is just in that moment there, like the old tram issue, or the trolley problem as they call it or whatever, which is there's a train or something coming. There's two tracks. There's one child on one track, but there's 5 or 6 people on the other track, and it's heading towards the one child, and you can change the thing to make it go hit the 5 or 6 people, saving the child, but ultimately you're killing more people. What's the ethical thing to do? Now, the reason they call it the trolley problem is it is a problem. There's no one right answer, and everyone's going to answer it differently, right? So a lot of people attribute that to that sequence too, where it's like, forget the wider picture of if it was going to work. Joel kills more people than would have been killed, right? By killing the Fireflies.
Yep.
And yes, you can make a substitute. Maybe the Fireflies are bad people, but also maybe they're not. Maybe these are the nicest people in the world. Or he kills a doctor, and maybe the doctor is the only doctor that anyone has, and now lots more people are going to die because they don't have a doctor. Things like that. And it's like, so people are like, what's the right thing to do? Do you like push the trolley? But in this situation, you have to then go, okay, what if the 5 people, I don't know how they ended up on that track, but what if they're the ones who tied the child to the track?
Well, yeah.
Now what's the ethical thing to do?
Nothing in the world is as simple as that problem
Suggests, right?
Suggests, yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you're like, all right, well, the running of the train, is it on coal? Is it coal based? Is that ruining the environment? Is that going to kill more people in the long run? Like there's way more smaller
who tied
things.
the people, or like even like then like you not pulling the lever. Because a lot of people say. No, but it's true. Like people always present that issue like as if there's only 2 options, and it's like
there's so many variables that go into every single issue.
So they hold on, but they say like, so if you like by not pulling the lever at all, right? It's already heading towards the child. So by not pulling the lever, you are responsible for killing the child. Actually, no, you are a witness to a crime that just happened.
Yeah.
I think I've seen one time where someone presented that to their own child.
Right.
And the child, like, so they had to do it. And then the child, it was like, oh, simple. And they got like this arc-shaped track.
Right.
Attached it. And then had the train go over the 5 people, go around, take out the one person, and go back. Problem solved.
Treat everyone equally.
Like, come on.
But look, it's fascinating. Guys, let us know what you think. And it's a fictional story, so it's a healthy debate. It's not about real people or anything. Whether you're on YouTube, to jump in the comments, or if this is an audio platforms, get in touch. What do you think? Did Joel do the right thing? Did he do the wrong thing? Is it not that simple? How complicated is it actually?
Is the train powered by coal?
Is the train? Yeah. There's no getting off this train we're on, man.
I think one of the really interesting things in that episode that I picked up on was they used the word cure, whereas in the game they used the word vaccine.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I think.
Do you think that's on purpose?
I think so. Yeah, because it's like, part of the debate then as well is that, let's say there is a vaccine made for this, would people accept it? Based on the world that we live in and what we've just gone through, would people actually accept it?
The interesting thing there actually is, And yeah, maybe that's a reason they've done that for like a real life comparison or whatever. But like, um, vaccine, which is actually what it would be,
Yeah.
as opposed to
It
cure,
will actually give you
right?
the cordyceps.
But it will make you immune from turning infected as they understand it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What it will not do is reverse the effects of people who are already cordyceps.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then if this was all to work, great. The people who are not infected are safe. We still have millions of infected people. So like the whole thing where Marlene says, you could have saved a broken world. It's like, that is not that simple. We already bombed cities and did not kill all the infected. Like
Mm.
we are strongly outnumbered. If it was just as simple as then go kill all the infected, they'd have done it by now. So when all the people who are like, okay, we can't get bitten, we can still get ripped apart.
You can still
Like
die.
we still have the
What kind
problem
of
of the
mutations?
infected.
Yeah, what kind of mutations come into humanity? Then do they actually have? Like they're just not crazy, but do they have like tendrils and shit and spores kind of things coming out of them now? Is that part of human evolution going forward?
It is
fucked up.
interesting because the more you think about what's actually presented, the information that's there,
Yep.
the more you can go like you can come up with 1,000 debates as to why Joel is wrong, and you can, and you can absolutely stand behind that. And like he's being selfish, 100%, he's being selfish. Of course he is. But you can also make 1,000 arguments as to why the Fireflies are wrong, and they're being selfish. And the one person who's not giving any choice in this whole matter is Ellie, who's going to be the victim here. And in a way is a victim both ways anyway. Because one of the things that Joel does that's absolutely wrong, and there's no arguing with it, is lying to her.
What a dick.
I don't even know how that no, but after the fact, I don't even know how that protects her. I have a feeling that, and it's great for the story and it's great for his selfish character and stuff, but I have a feeling that if he had told her this way, it's like, Ellie, we got fucking kidnapped by the Fireflies. They were going to kill you. So I killed you. I got you out of there. I don't know what we're going to do now.
Yeah, he's a shit
Which
liar.
is a basic version of the story. I have a feeling she would have been like, are you serious?
You want to successfully lie?
Kill me? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. If you want to successfully lie, you give them what, like 70% of the truth.
Yeah, half-truths.
Yeah.
But it's right. Like, she probably wouldn't have chased the truth down as much then.
Yeah, it's wires, but yeah.
But anyway. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into our review of this season as a whole then. Like, if you want to hear our basic breakdown of each episode, you can go back and check it out. So there's no need for us to go like pinpoint each thing again, but it's just now with the show as an overall, what is your overall review? There's probably hints of it anyway from talking about the other ones, but now with it all in scope, your final thoughts or your final review. Eric, I'd like to come to you first.
Right. Too rushed it. Ali, what are you doing?
It's a doge.
It's a dog.
She doesn't like doors being closed.
Go, dog,
Right.
go.
So the show is a bit rushed, to be honest. It is very rushed. They're rushing over things. I was thinking back over it. We are saying there's not a lot of infected in it. There's actually 5 episodes out of the 9 that have infected in it.
Sure.
It's just the problem is that they don't play that big of a role.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just episode 1, 2, and 5
Mhm.
that kind of play their biggest role. But they are in 3. There's 1 in 2 and 3. And then there's 1 in the last episode. Oh, and there's 1 in episode 7. So that's 6 episodes? 5, 6 episodes where there's actually an infected in it. But yeah, they kind of just don't really... Something about those 1 or 2 that don't leave a huge impact for some reason.
And we're not the only ones who feel that way.
No, because even my supervisor, who's never played the game, she was like, for a zombie show, there's not a lot of zombies in it.
Mm-hmm.
But
It was actually
they've
funny.
been addressing that as well, saying that for part 2 there will be more infected.
I think they said part 2 is going to be 2 seasons as well, or it's at least going to be more than 1.
So basically, all of the criticisms that we had for part 1, looks like they're going to address it. They're also going to change the structure of it. You know.
Yep, very good. I think they did a really good job at adapting game to on screen. You know, they did the one thing everyone's been saying for decades: just follow the fucking story of the game. You know. Just do that and you're fine. Now they made a few little changes that were not really. That was unnecessary. Didn't need to do that. It was fine. in hindsight, looking at the whole thing, that Bill and Ted episode is just way too fucking long. And
Who?
Bill and Ted.
yeah,
Excellent adventure.
Billy says
You know,
excellent event. Excellent.
that episode, it just felt so weirdly out of place.
That
Like
Frank and
it just
Honest episode.
Bill and Frank,
Yeah.
a blend of the two.
Yeah.
So that
Brank.
episode, the Brank episode, it is too long, and it is a filler episode. But then like explaining that, because you were talking, Chris, about when people are asking, it's like, how do you play that Frank and Honest episode? And you're like, oh, it's so different. And I was explaining that to my supervisor. I was trying to explain that to her. It's like, oh, it's very different. It's a little bit more harrowing. They're actually not together with each other. And she was like, oh, I prefer the shows. I prefer the show's little fantasy version of it.
Sure.
Which I thought was very funny. But I think they did a good job. But the game is better.
Cool.
Which is probably no different than when people are probably watching Lord of the Rings and go, no, the books are better. You know?
Mm.
So
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Adam, you want to give us your review of season 1 of The Last of Us?
Yeah, I think obviously the way the characters were brought to life and the set design and all that kind of side of things was really, really good. But I don't know if it's actually a great adaptation from game to screen, purely because they leave so much game out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kind of like there's so much substance in the gameplay, and what they kind of have just done is focused on the cutscenes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really the game.
where's our pulling of the chain, and they have to hold
Well,
the chain?
they you know, in the last episode, they incorporated a game mechanic, which was the ladder.
Mm.
It can be done. Where's the brick? Where's the, like? I would have loved to have seen them incorporate game mechanics as part of the story. And I think one of the biggest moments that, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, what stood out to The Last of Us, like if you ask anyone about The Last of Us, there's always that discussion about, oh man, that hotel basement. That always comes up. How is that not in the show?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much moments missing, and there is a focus on, and I remember we mentioned it in another episode where I was like, I didn't think the main theme of The Last of Us is love. I think love is a theme. I didn't think it was the main theme. And it's definitely the main theme of this show. And I think I always felt that the main theme was, and I was thinking back on it, was the thing that if you go and get Last of Us signed by Troy Baker, what does he write on it? There's two things.
Endure and survive.
Endure and survive. Survival is really the theme of the show, or the theme of the game. And they need to be able to throw enough shit at you to really, push through and show the importance of survival.
Mm-hmm.
And true survival, like love comes into play then, as opposed to showing all these various different ways in which people can experience love in a post-apocalyptic world. It felt like a different thing. And I do love the Bill and Frank episode. I do love the Left Behind episode. I loved the Ashley Johnson opening. There's moments, I really did like the prologue to the first episode. I just didn't like it in the context of how they presented it. There's things there's extra shit in here. There's extra stories that could have been its own season. A 1.5 after this one. Whereas I think this one should have just focused on Joel and Ellie.
Yeah. Cool. So for me, I think, like, a lot of people are going to talk about, is this the best video game adaptation we've ever gotten so far? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And it is because they did the thing that we've certainly been saying for the longest time, which is actually adapt the game. Now, where our criticisms tend to come from is like, is this the best possible adaptation of The Last of Us? I would say no. I do think there's a lot of things that are missing. I think the pacing is a problem and it is rushed. But divorced from that, I'm super thankful for what they've done here. Because and how successful it has been. If you just look at like how many people have watched it, the praise that it's getting, the reviews that the episodes are getting, kind of regardless of like personal little comeuppance, I'm really thankful that because we fucking know how studios think. You see, like the success of the MCU, and then every other studio wants to replicate that with every other property in the movie industry. So I'm looking at everyone who's thinking of adapting video games and they're going, huh, that worked? Why did it work? What did it do that none of the rest of them did? It seemed to adapt the game. So what I think will happen, I think this could pave the way for actual really good video game adaptation properties, whether that's movies or whether that's shows. And for that, I'm fucking delighted. But then to take the show on its own merits, I think the performances are great. I think largely the writing is really good. And I think this is a good show, but not an amazing show. I do think it's missing that, like, oh, I can't fucking wait to watch the next episode. Like, I'm really, like, itching for it. And I do think that not enough episodes and too rushed. But generally speaking, I think this was a really, really good season. And in truth, I'm actually excited. Again, not itching for it, can wait. It doesn't bother me how long it takes. When it comes out, though, I will watch it. I'm quite interested and excited to see what they do with part 2, because when we played part 2, we found issues with the narrative, issues with the way it was structured. I think it could work better as a show.
I think it'll work better as a show.
If I'm being honest. And hearing them saying there's things that we'll restructure because it wouldn't, like, I don't think you can adapt part 2 as linear as, say, part 1 was done. Because whether you liked it or not, that only works as a game. The walk a mile in your enemy's shoes type thing, right? Without getting too much into it.
Mm-hmm.
They can't do a whole, I don't think it's, now if they do this, I think they're making a serious mistake. If they do one full season of Ellie's perspective, and then a whole season of another character's perspective, I think they're making a pivotal mistake. So I don't think they'll do that. And as a result, I think the story could crescendo in a way that I think is more, like, it will work better than how the game felt.
I think that if a TV perspective, the best thing to do is parallel.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, because you can, and like you've heard the creators talk about it before, like with this season, even, that because it's a TV show, they can change perspective to other characters. Whereas in a game, you can't. You gotta stay with your character. So they can change perspective a lot more, cut from one character to another, and do it more parallel. In a game, it would have felt weird. You would have been constantly jumping. The way The Last of Us Part 2 is written anyway feels like a TV series. So I actually think that to watch it, I think it's going to work really well, actually. And I'm hoping, given the success of this one, it is a shame that, because I think The Last of Us 1 is the better game and the better story. Mm-hmm. So it's a shame that this is all we get from it.
Yeah, like this was the experiment.
But however, as a result, I do think HBO are going to go, right, make as many episodes as you want, make them as long as you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So part of that's a shame, but going forward as well, it's a good thing for what is to come. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think. Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I don't know. Maybe my opinion will change when part 2 comes out, but I don't think I'm overly looking forward to it. There's an element of, like, sure, I'm kind of glad it's over.
Right. Yeah. I still think I would have enjoyed this show more binging it.
Probably, actually.
Yeah.
This weekly thing, I have to admit, halfway through, I was getting a bit tired of what do you think of it this week? Well, I thought it was rushed.
Yeah.
What do you think of it this week? Well, I thought it was rushed. I still take the standout.
There's no cliffhangers, is there, on every episode?
Not really, no. Like, so in that sense, it is a case
for
of, like, I would just watch the next one. I would just go again.
But this is again why with Sam and Henry's episode, I would have just ended the episode with the bang.
Yeah,
absolutely. I still
think because at least you got a cliffhanger.
I think episode 5 is the best episode still.
Yeah.
As a whole.
Yeah.
But I think there's more. That's the other thing. Like, for all the little things, like my little, like, I think there's more good than bad in the show. And that's why I think it's a good show. I don't think it's a bad show. Like, I've seen plenty of bad shows and stopped watching. Like, I mean, fucking hell. Last year we had the Netflix Resident Evil show.
You watched all that, man.
Fair
I
play,
watched
to you.
all of
Fair
that.
play to you.
Let
I
me- well,
I watched
well done.
two episodes.
Actually, let's put that into perspective. The Last of Us is a fucking amazing show.
Yeah, but I think
If you want to take
our
that, you know what I mean?
our criticism is coming from our love of the source material.
Absolutely.
And considering our biggest criticism is it's rushed and there's not enough episodes, while that is a negative comment, there's a positive to that. That's we want to see more of this.
Yes, correct.
You know what I mean? Because
Correct.
they are doing a really good job.
And
with
some
it.
reframing of some things that are done. Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I think
But
as
mean,
well,
that-
there's
that was
also
it
an
most.
element of maybe it's just selfishness on my part.
100%. You are Joel.
Yeah. I think there's
You're
an
the bad
element
guy.
of that. If you've never played the game, I'm sorry, you've never gotten the full thing, right? You'll never experience what I just experienced, kind of a thing.
Right.
So if we have that conversation, it kind of reminds you of that time, Eric, when you had that conversation with a friend who was like really wanting Predator to appear in an Alien movie because what they
No, it was they wanted Alien to be at the end of the Predator trailer, and me and another friend trying to explain to him how that doesn't work because they don't actually exist in the same universe.
Just because you had that version, that was your
Yeah.
experience. That Alien
That
and
was
Predator
his-
are actually part of the same continuity. It's like, well, we can't now have a one-to-one
con-
conversation. Really, we can kind of step on, but I don't want to be spoiling parts of the game for you
Yeah,
because I can't really have those. I can't really have that
But
conversation.
that's why I'm quite thankful for like the main beats of the show, because
Yeah.
for the most part, like again, we can talk about. I can talk to someone who's watched the show about the death of Sarah.
Mhm.
I could talk to someone about the ending. You know what I mean? I could talk to them about David. I could talk to them about like the big change, I suppose, was like what did you think of Bill? It's like, oh, I love Bill and Frank. You know, it's like, yeah, okay, so we have a different take on that character.
Hmm.
But some of the other like big beats, like what did you think of Riley? You know, that stuff is all there. Versus, like I said earlier on, like if someone was to watch the Resident Evil movies, I'm like, what do you think of Leon S. Kennedy? Like,
Yeah, like
he's-
the main characters. But I think the overall,
like Leon sucks.
I think the
you know?
universe is different though. I think the actual world in the game is different than the world presented in the show.
Well, I
Because
think
of the
that-
way they presented Fedra, the way they presented Kathleen and her little group, the way they presented David's group, like the actual communities. Because like, I think when you do world building, it's more than just the general setting, but it's the different societies that are in it that kind of really dictate.
Well, I think that's where I suppose I had a bit of a problem with
Kathleen's
group,
whole thing, yeah.
because it was like they just reminded me of the wolves that it's like, now look, see, they're good people.
They have a
But that's
reason,
not-
yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't like that in Pittsburgh. They were now I know we're in Kansas.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean, they were supposed to represent the people of Pittsburgh, which were horrible people. And then now I was then thinking, but at least we'll get David's group. Then we get David's group, and it's like, okay, so we're not getting the bad people. Where are the Raiders? Where's the guys with the hockey masks going on a motorbike? You got Mad Max driving his car.
I actually think it would have been cool, and I think because there's elements of the Kathleen thing that I do like, but just not in the way it was done. And
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it would have been cool to get the whole thing from just the perspective of Joel and Ellie, where everyone in it presented to you is fucking awful, basically. And you only caught the end of the Bill thing, right? When they go in and get the letter, so you don't even get to see them. And then for a part like a 1.5, a season 1.5, you get all the filler bits, and you can actually see it all connect
as mini episodes.
as mini
each one.
episodes. So you get the Bill and Frank, the entire episode, but you can see how it connected into the previous one. You get the baddies in Kansas, but then it's actually Kathleen's whole fucking backstory thing there, and you can have more Sam and Henry then included in that episode. So it's like it'll all kind of connect together, and I think that way it would work from from one person's perspective. It's this. But when you have the full story, then it might change your perspective, which is kind of the whole point of the Abby thing.
Absolutely. Part of me wants to, as a fun experiment, get like MP4 versions of each episode, and make and be real strict, make a 3-hour cut, a movie of that show. But
What would you cut out?
yeah, and just Joel Nelly. It's Joel Nelly's story. It's Joel Nelly's story, so that it does crescendo in that final scene, and there's no distractions. So, and yeah, the difficulty of like there is stuff there where you're like, that's really great. Like for example, like a lot of people, the Frank and Bill episode is their favorite episode. I'd have to cut the whole thing.
Yeah, you would. You'd have to cut the whole
It's
thing out.
not. You'd literally just put in the bit when they find the letter and just have a bit of a talk and move on, because you'd have to stick to just Joel Nelly's story. Like, and I'd maybe cut out Kathleen as a character. They're just me, Henry, and Sam, and they're just trying to get out of there. Like, never leave Joel Nelly really, and
Yeah.
just see how would the ending hit you then. It could be fun. Now you'd still be there's great stuff you lose, but I think it'd be a fun experiment to see.
Yeah, it's a bit like
work.
the because I have a fan edit of the Hobbit trilogy done
Absolutely, I was
as
thinking
one
of that.
movie.
Yeah,
And the issue with the Hobbit as a trilogy is not the fact that they stretched one book into 3 movies, because I think it's actually doable. The issue with the Hobbit is that it's not about the Hobbit for some reason. They've left the Hobbit, and all of a sudden you're getting all this backstory for like the Necromancer and the Council, and it actually becomes Thorin's movie at one point, and then it's not Thorin's movie, it's actually Bard's movie, but then it becomes Legolas's movie, and then you kind of forget, oh yes, the Hobbit. And then at the very end, the end just doesn't. When the moment Bilbo is crying over the death of Thorin, it's not earned.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's how I feel actually with The Last
agree
of
with
Us.
that.
Yeah.
When he goes,
It's the Hobbit.
It's yeah, because when he finally gets back to Bag End, and someone's reading the contract, and they go, "Who's Thorin?" And he stops, and it's supposed to be a real moment of sadness. It's the moment that's supposed to gut punch you. He goes, "He was my friend."
I don't believe you.
It's like, when? At what point were you guys friends? He tried to kill you in this movie.
He was a
all
dick
the time.
Yeah, he was a dick to you for the entirety of the first movie. I think he turned
They
on
hugged
you.
once, right? They hugged once.
They hugged at the end of the first one. I think he kind of turned on him at one point in the second one, but was pretty indifferent to him. Like, wasn't that buddy with him in the second one? And then the third one, tries to straight up kill him.
Yeah. So yes, yeah, there's elements of that. But anyway, season 1 has come to an end. I am happy that actually the sales of The Last of Us, in particular Last of Us Part 1, have gone up, skyrocketed since this show.
Oh,
There
is
are
that
plenty of
is that the
people-
game based on the TV show? Is it that game?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
The game based on the TV show.
So like, there's plenty of people who've watched the show now are going to play the game.
There is a fear with that.
That's a good thing. Why?
The
Because we only got the Bill.
No,
and
no.
Frank
The
and
fear I'd have. Actually, I think that'd be kind of cool if they actually start adding in like extra DLC. That kind of, it's like extra content from the show. I think that'd be actually kind of cool. But no, my fear would be
mash the shit out of Circle.
Sony as a company.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in their film endeavors have always been really not great.
Yes.
And when they do see, like, you know, you were mentioning about the way the MCU has gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could all praise the MCU in the early days because of its faithfulness to really adapting comic books to the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Once it becomes a beast of its own, it loses that and has its own formula. And now it's not about, can we be a successful adaptation of a comic book? Can we just make a good Marvel movie? It's its own thing now. So my fear is that we actually end up getting less games because of how long it takes to make games, how expensive it is to make games, and instead they're doing remakes of games now because they're trying to find some form of, right, here's another avenue. What if we get less games and it's actually just shows and movies based on shit that we've already played? But that doesn't guarantee that they're going to be as good as. But it may get to a point. I would like a little sprinkle of. I know they're doing the God of War show. They're going to do a Horizon one, and that's great and all.
And a Ghost of Tsushima movie, I think.
Right. Okay. So, will it get to a point where you're like, here,
another one?
Yeah, another one. That I don't want.
Movie.
So
They'll
that's
probably do like a little big
that's my fear.
animated movie.
Yeah, I mean, probably, but what can you do about it? You know, there's nothing you can do about it.
No, there's
That is
nothing
gonna
you can
happen.
do about it. But
Go
it's
on
just,
Twitter. Give out.
Well, you can decide not to watch it. That's ultimately what you
Yeah.
can do about it.
You can, but there is an element of like, I used to love Marvel comics.
Yeah.
I can't fucking really stand it now. Really, the way the industry has changed and people's perception of it, and it has become a McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And I would hope that one of the few hobbies I fucking love doesn't become this.
Yeah, well, like we used to love the superhero movies in general. X-Men, Spider-Man, and Batman were like our
Yeah, they were
three
like my
main.
favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's
Now I'm getting
that
too
was
much
just
Batman even.
that. Yeah, that was just like I actually don't care about superhero movies at all. This is the opposite of what I was when I was a child. It's annoying. They used to be a big event. Or Star Wars. Oh, Star Wars! We're gonna go see the next Star Wars movie, and obviously we don't really care because we just love Star Wars. We're watching episode 2 or 3 or whatever it was in cinema, and now it's just like, fuck, there's another Star Wars thing. Jesus, so what's this? The 20th project we're working on?
I hear what you're saying. I'm having kind of a different. It's having a different effect on me though, in that games are still the place that I think I go to for like my best form of entertainment. In that, if if they were to reveal another Spider-Man movie tomorrow, I'd be like, ah, not another fucking Spider-Man movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
But by God, give me Insomniac Spider-Man 2 and give me their Wolverine game. Like, would I
Yeah.
care about another Wolverine movie? Give me their Wolverine game.
No,
And no, but hold on, Star Wars.
yeah,
I'm fucking sick of Star Wars.
yeah.
But by God, give me that Jedi Survivor game.
I know.
So I'm having a different, like when it comes to the games, I have a different.
Yes, but
That's
what I'm
spectrum.
saying is that if there's now a slowdown on first-party PlayStation titles to focus more on the movies and the shows,
Yeah.
so we get less of games, more of shows. That's my fear.
Okay, yeah, it could. I don't see it happening. I really don't. I think their games make way too much money.
Well, I don't know if they actually really are.
Ah, come on.
No, I don't know because they're actually so expensive.
80 quid.
No, yeah, I know, and even that is like they're struggling. Like it's hard to get enough money out of the customer to pay for these things, and they're getting so expensive to make.
They are. Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, and studios are being shut down, and projects are being cancelled, and things are being moved around, and these companies are trying to find other ways to make money all the time. Right? Loot boxes didn't work.
Yeah.
So then they release unfinished games and hopefully patch them later. That's not really working. Then they're doing the delays. That's not helping.
But these Sony first-party studios haven't experienced any of those things.
You don't think so?
What they're doing is working. They haven't tried loot boxes. They haven't done fucking like. They've just stuck to the whole single-player experience that it just seems to work, and they're always like the highest-selling games of the year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that the likes of. We never really hear about the ones that don't do well. Like Gran Turismo is a game that doesn't really do well. That does have those kind of things,
Well,
which was a console seller.
Or like Forspoken.
Is
Has
that
not done well.
not
That's lost a serious fucking ton of money.
Days
Spent like
Gone?
$100 million on it apparently, and everyone's like, how?
Days Gone was a big money loser.
Yeah.
Order 1886.
Yeah.
So yes, their successes are good, but the failures. I think there's just there's also that kind of like you're forced to do. The studios are almost forced to do the thing that's always going to obviously work. So if the show thing represents a big money maker, my fear would, because like we can look at PlayStation as a company, and I think PlayStation's focus would be those single player games. I'm talking about Sony though. Where does Sony decide to distribute its money? Will they decide to pull financing from some of the PlayStation division to focus more on the shows?
Right, okay. I what you're saying.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I'm hoping that this show paves the way for an awesome Metal Gear Solid movie and things like that. Like people really, really going, let's follow the source material as closely as we can and lose the things that don't work, but keep the things that absolutely did and not put Raiden in the first movie. You know what I mean? Like the weird, wacky things that people used to do with these things where it's like, hey, they're going to be in Shadow Moses and there's going to be geckos everywhere. You know, like don't do that. You know,
Or put Super Mario in there because, it's part of Smash.
People like games like
like
Smash Bros.
Yeah, Solid Snake was in
Right.
Smash Bros. So
Were they not in the same universe? Like
Yeah,
Solid
same
Snake
thing.
and Mario? Like,
Yeah.
but now we'd love to hear from you guys. This has been our longest episode in a while. It's been way longer than the actual
It-
episode of the finale of The Last of Us. But we'd love to hear all your thoughts. Let us know your review of The Last of Us Season 1. What did you think about it? Are you looking forward to more shows, or do you have concerns about maybe, like, obviously not immediately, but down the line, could this lead to a problem? What do you think personally? And what did you think of the finale? And was Joel right? I want to hear your thoughts on that debate. So if you're watching this YouTube, drop down in the comments to share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this discussion, want to give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, ring the notification bell for all future content, including the stuff we're going to be talking about next, because we have now obviously finished The Last of Us. So our topics going forward will not be The Last of Us. But hey, that Resident Evil 4 remake is right around the corner. So you know that's going to be the next thing we talk about. And to those of you who listen on audio platforms, you can also touch base on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Brothers Take. Again, to give your take on The Last of Us Season 1. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. And one last time, I would just like to say,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye, dude.